Welcome back to another episode of Engine Noise, and today we're back with Brandon Hornbuckle. We're going to be taking his, I'm not sure the year of this.
I think it's a 76 model, 1976 Plymouth Fury.
Plymouth Fury, Rosco P. Coltrane edition. You know, it is the cop car. We have all the bells and whistles down here, which I'll take a couple snapshots after everything's said and done so that I can show them off a little bit. But we're going to take a ride in this thing, just talk about, you know, kind of the premise of what we do here on Engine Noise. We're going to talk about the pros, the cons, things that you've experienced since you bought it and since you've been driving around a little bit. And I understand you just got this recently, so those stories will be limited, but we're going to get what he has experienced thus far. So let's get right into this ride, man.
Let's go, man. Yeah, the first thing I noticed when I got in this car was, man, this thing's gonna ride like a battleship. And you know, this thing rides as good as a new one.
These old cars, man, especially four doors like this one, you know, it's like they all have really good ride quality, in my opinion. You know, like the modern cars, you feel every little nick and bump in the road. The suspension was dampened for the weight of the car and everything. But I know it is just like what you said, though. This is like driving around a battleship.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's you know, one thing that I did notice, you know, some pros about this car is, you know, like I said, it's a 1976 model, and I mean, everything on this car nearly works. I mean, the headlights, turn signal, brake lights, you know, all of the lights and stuff that for the police car part of it. I mean, all of them works perfectly. I mean, but then you go to the con. I mean, the con about this thing is, like I said, it's a 1976 model. And so what that means is it looks like you're in a fist fight in here driving down the road just to keep it on your side of the road, you know, because the steering wheel is wore out. You know, I guess the steering's wore out.
Well, that would actually be the gearbox in most old vehicles, and a lot of people don't replace those gearbox or you know, put any attention into them. Like my Charger does the same thing. You know, it wanders just a little bit. But they tend to hold up pretty well even without it, though. And when it comes down to it, it's like, would I rather pay to rebuild the gearbox or buy a new one, or just kind of deal with it? These old cars are very much a luxury item, you know, for the most part.
Oh yeah,
you know, they're usable luxury items, but
you know, last night's the furthest I've drove it. I drove it about an hour. I don't know, probably about 45 minutes one way. You know, I don't know how many miles that is, but you know, it wasn't, you know, 40, 50 miles, and I mean, the car done great. You know, of course, another con is no air conditioner. I mean, it has air conditioner, but hopefully we're going to get that fixed.
Yeah. And that's where we're actually headed today, is to the air conditioner person. So.
Yeah, he is the vintage air on these cars. He is the go-to guy, and also the wiring go-to guy on these vintage cars. You know, I'm pretty excited to have the chance to maybe him getting the air conditioning going on this, and you know, he's gonna look at doing some wiring fix on the General Lee. But you know, it's like last night driving this car, going back to this car. I mean, like I said, everything works, just about it, besides the air. Which would be lucky if it worked anyway. Like, because getting classic air charged as well, like getting the proper refrigerant to go in it is, you know, it's about impossible these days, like, unless you get it converted over. And then you have to kind of worry about, is it really worth doing? Because, you know, like, is it actually going to keep it cool on a dated AC system? So. Well, and you know, I mean, I don't think it, you know, like the General Lee, you really don't want air in it, you know, because, I mean, you're going to ride with your windows down. You also have those lovely vent windows. That's exactly right. Yeah. But like this car, I mean, it's a four-door car. You want the freaking air to work, or I do. I mean, you know, it's going to be me and every who riding in this car. you know, it just, I mean, Alabama weather in the summertime, 110-degree heat index.
Yep.
You want the air to work. I mean, it's something as simple as last night. I turned my headlights on and was going down the road, and I said, well, I wonder if the dome light works. Hey, the freaking dome light works. I mean, how many old cars the dome light don't even work? You know?
I was actually really surprised about that in my old car when all the interior lights worked.
Yeah.
You know, and I was like, man, like this is wild that everything actually works in it. I do have a question for you in this car, though. How many looks do you get? Because I imagine the guy we passed here a little while back was probably looking like, oh, God, cops.
Well, you know, it's kind of a funny story. Last night, while I was driving this thing, coming out of Hartselle, we went to, I might as well be my nephew's birthday party last night, and I carried the car. Just because he's 3 years old, and I thought he'd like the lights and the sirens and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. But anyway, we was coming back home last night, and this car was behind us, and so, or there's actually two cars behind us. Well, the car that was behind the car that was behind us decided to pass the car that was right, you know, behind me. Well, when he passed, he just nosedived it right there on the road. I guess he thought it was the police, you know. And then, you know, the other funny thing, I mean, just last night, we was going through Main Street, and you had people stopping, hey, there's Rosco! You know, there's Rosco! And, look, just like right then, we're on Highway 67, and somebody's blowing the horn and waving, you know?
Yeah, everybody knows, man. Everybody knows.
It's like, we met on our road going to our house last night, we met a motorcycle. I mean, when he was coming to me, I mean, he was hauling butt. Yep. And when he seen this car, I don't know if he thought it was a legit police car or what. It was just like, whoa, whoa, you know, his gear and it's so funny, man. So funny.
I guess with the big old style lights on it, you don't get confused too much in terms of the actual police.
Oh, no.
So it's like, I'm guessing you don't get any type of like police headaches with it.
No. Well, speaking of that, Brian, there's a cool thing yesterday. We're going toward Hartselle, going to the birthday party, and there's two Morgan County cops behind me. Mm-hmm. And I tell my wife and my daughter, I said, well, we're probably fixing to get pulled over, you know, because this thing has a Hazard County tag on it.
Yeah.
And they just cruised right behind me. When they turned off down at the interstate, they flicked their lights on at me, saying, hey, you know, I thought that was really cool. I mean, you know, I've had a deputy that's come to the house and seen the car and been a huge fan of the Dukes of Hazzard, and, you know, I think that the old police car, no matter what it is, kind of touches the heartstring of our law enforcement. Yeah. I really believe that, and that's pretty cool. Mm-hmm. You know, and something that I just got a phone call day before yesterday. The Hartselle Depot days, the people that's doing that or whatever contacted me. They're wanting to use this car as what do they call touch-a-truck or touch-a-car for the kids.
Yeah.
Pretty cool.
Yeah, definitely. I'm imagining as well it helps out a lot that it's a movie cop car.
Oh, yeah.
You know, if it wasn't the Dukes of Hazzard cop car, probably wouldn't be so easy.
Oh, no.
It'd probably be a little bit more of a headache from the police officers, because most officers have probably seen Dukes of Hazzard.
Oh, yeah.
You know, especially when they know you, because you're a local around here.
Oh, yeah, and you know, and these guys around here, you don't get to see this sort of thing in this part of the country.
Yeah.
You know, in some of the other places in the country, you get to see more of the Dukes of Hazzard type stuff, and kind of sad Alabama don't have much of it. Mm-hmm. Or at least our part of Alabama.
Well, you're changing that, so.
Oh yeah, we're going to change that. Maybe before it's over with, like you told me earlier when we were sitting in the driveway. I hope that I can if it allows, money allows, and budget allows, that maybe here in the next 5 or 10 years I'll have the whole collection.
Yeah, that would be really cool right there. That'd be a collection to be like worthy, like to be looking at.
Yeah. But you know, the old car, you know, going back to just the old car, I mean, it's a 76 model car.
Yep.
You know, it leaks a little power steering fluid. It may leak a little bit of oil, you know. I mean, all of them do. In most cases.
That's good to point out too, for just going back to the purpose of some of the engine noise. It's really to go over kind of the things to expect in older vehicles or certain styles. Like I've done a lowrider truck here previous to this episode, and you know, it's just some of the stuff you'll have to expect. Like with that truck, is like you have to expect to replace a lot of the suspension on it. With this car here being more of a classic car, like our Chargers and whatnot, it's like it's gonna leak some of the fluids here and there, like whether that's oil, whether that's radiator fluid, power steering fluid, like you mentioned.
Yeah.
I think the power steering fluid is much more desirable than the rest of the leaks.
Oh yeah. Well, and you know, I mean, and I'm gonna say this to the people that's watching this is, you know, these old cars, they're awesome and they're fun. I love driving them. But, you know, I mean, I've got into a habit before I go anywhere, you know, I check all my fluids. Yeah. It's not like a brand new car, you know. I think that's a must do every time you get into one of these old cars is check your oil, check your transmission fluid, check, you know, your power steering fluid, check your water or antifreeze. Mm-hmm. You know, because like you said, these are old classic cars, and I mean, parts are pretty scarce, especially for a Plymouth Fury. You know, I mean, it's you know, of course the motors, you know, I mean, you can pretty well get them redone, but why? I mean, 5 minutes of your time. I mean, that's just been my opinion and what I've come accustomed to do.
What you're saying basically though is just, you know, it requires a little bit more work, but if you're on it, then you're not going to have that many problems.
Well, that's exactly right. And, you know, I think of us, everybody that, you know, that's going out and buying an old car, you know, I think they pretty well know in their minds and their hearts, hey, this is something that I've dreamed about. This is something that I know I'm going to have to work on, because you have to work on them.
Yep.
You may not be mechanically inclined, but you're going to learn how.
Well, that's where I mentioned in your actual Automotive Tales episode, it's like, if you're going to do something like modernizing or anything like that, or even just the ownership of an old car, it's best to go on and start learning the ins and outs. Like, if you don't know them, go buy a shop manual, because they're pretty cheap. There's a bunch of reproductions online. So go buy a shop manual, learn to do it yourself, because there's not many mechanics that are willing to even work on an old car, basically because they know there's going to be a lot of additional problems that maybe they fish out, and maybe you're not aware of it, and then you try to blame them, and it comes back on the shops and stuff. So if you do it and take it to a shop that likes you enough to do it, don't blame the mechanics.
Oh, no, you know, and that's one thing about this car. Like you said earlier, I haven't had it long and haven't drove it a whole lot. Mm-hmm. But one thing that I learned, like with working on the air conditioner, you know, I thought that the dryer was bad and was leaking. Well, I started trying to round up a new dryer. Well, that's about like pulling hen's teeth, you know. You got to order it, or you got to find it, you know, what, you just can't go to the local parts store and pick one up, just about like every one of these old cars. Mm-hmm. Of any sort or model, shape, form. But one thing cool about this car is it actually, when I purchased this car, it actually come with the owner's manual. I mean, from brand new. Matter of fact, it had the window sticker in it. This car has been a government car its whole life.
That's cool.
And I just found out this week, because I got that book out of the back seat, because you know, it was just back there laying, and I was like, well, what is this? Well, I mean, it had the window sticker in it, what government, you know, entity it went to, and I mean, it's been a police car its whole life. I mean, it hasn't been a Hazard County police car its whole life,
right?
But it's been a police car its whole life.
That's cool. We'll get into that story back in Automotive Tales. Here, you know, it's just kind of about that ride and everything.
And you know, you've been riding in here, man. This thing rides great, don't it?
I love these old cars, man. I love how they ride. Like, I love the seats, because, like, these seats, like, I've owned an older car, which I guess I need to tell some short stories on my older car here. If it's not already out by the time this releases, it'll be out following up here sometime shortly soon. But I used to own a 72 Ford Thunderbird.
Oh, yeah.
Big old boat.
Yeah.
There's no better description of that car than a boat. Like, and it had these nice pillow top seats.
Oh, yeah.
And that's what these feel like. You know, these aren't pillow top, but it's like, these are just like that. Though. Like, these are the most comfortable seats.
Like you're sitting in a Lazy Boy.
Yeah.
That's the way it is.
And that's probably why Lazy Boy was a big deal back in the 80s and 90s.
Yeah. But, you know, I mean, you know, you got your typical things, little quirks that I've seen since I've had this car. You know, I say everything works, but the only two things that I have found on this car that does not work is the AC and the fuel gauge.
I was about to say, is your fuel gauge working? Because
No.
if not, that's pretty bad right there. But I have been watching your temperature gauge, because I am very curious to see how it's dealing in this extreme heat of Alabama, because we've had some of the hottest heat index days this last week. Just to kind of date this, you know, right now I think it's August 20 something, but you know, it's like we've had some extreme heat out here, and I was very curious to see where your temperature is sitting
Well,
at.
you know, yesterday,
It's looking great. Like,
yeah, and I mean, yesterday we left home about 5 o'clock yesterday, or no, it was about 6 o'clock, and it was still warm. It was still hot, and you know, of course, we went through town and stop and go traffic, and you know, we cruised around 50, 55 miles an hour, and like I said, stop and go traffic, and man, where the heat is right now is where it stayed.
And,
you know,
I'll mention on that, I don't remember if I mentioned it on my episode of Engine Noise, but watching your temperature is a pretty big deal in these old cars. Not because you need to worry about it, but because of the way that the coolant system has evolved over time. Modern cars don't really ever have an overheating problem for the most part when you're under normal circumstances, even in traffic. Older vehicles, though, because it actually does rely on like clutch fans and, you know, old style thermostats where it's temperature based on a coil and things like that. You might want to, you really want to pay attention to your temperature in like stop and go traffic, like, or cruising. I didn't think we'd ever have a real issue, you know, but like
when you're sitting for long periods of time, you need to watch it.
Yeah, you need to watch it, because you'll get up, it'll climb a little bit quicker in those old V8s or whatever you might have.
Well, and the fans just ain't what they used to, or what they are now. You know, what I call turbo fans. You know, I mean, these old fans are just turning out there like a prop on an airplane.
Exactly.
But you know, for far as now and what we've drove it, I mean, man, you know, to be honest about it, I was really surprised that this car rides and drives and everything works as well as it does to be a 1976 model. Yeah. You know, and I'm really looking forward to down the road and learning some more things. Maybe we can get together again when I've drove this thing to all around the country, you know, to different car shows and events.
Every single car you got that you want to talk about, as soon as the stories are there, I'm down.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, you know, it's a lot of fun, man. It's it's a lot of fun to talk about these old cars, and
especially with someone who actually cares, because that's one thing as well with old cars. Now, this is off the topic of this car, but it's like when you're at shows and things and people are talking to you about cars, or talking to about your car, there's always that question, do you actually care?
Yeah.
You know, do you actually care to hear my story?
Yeah.
Like, or am I just wasting my breath?
Well, you know, and it's nice for people to to kind of get engaged with you and good conversation about your car, their car, what they may have had at one time, or what they're hoping to get.
Yeah.
You know, because Lord knows, if anybody knows me, they know that my whole life I've prayed and wished for the 2 cars I have in my collection now.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
You know, just like riding this whole thing around now. You know, I'm finding out kind of new things, and you know, it's like working all of the sirens and the flashing lights and all of that stuff. You know, I mean, I've not figured it all out down to an art. Now, my son, I mean, he knows every button that's in here.
He's played with it.
Oh yeah, I mean,
he gets a kick out of it.
Oh yeah,
it shows.
Well, you know, and actually,
that's what it's about, though.
Well, you know, and actually, before we got in the car and was going, and I come outside, I was inside sewing patches on Roscoe's uniform. Believe that or not. So, yeah, I'm pretty excited to see what holds down the road for this car, and you know, it's. I mean, like the General Lee, you know, when I got it, the first thing I did was go get a line. Oh, yeah. That helps a lot in these old cars, getting them driving straight.
Regular maintenance.
Yes.
Regular maintenance that a lot of people on their modern cars probably don't do. On old cars, it is imperative to do it.
Yes.
Because the older tech stuff, they're not using, this might go over some people's head, but they're not using metric. They're using standard, and standard has more leeway in its sizes, so you have to be on your maintenance with it. But
well, and you know, man, and you touched on this earlier, and we're going to be getting to where we're going here in just a little bit. I've drove around.
All right, well,
to do this, but you know, one thing that I'm going to say, and you touched on it a while ago, to the people that's going to watch this, is especially on these old cars. If you can't do all of it yourself, and I can't, and you can't, if you can find those guys that you trust and that will work on them, keep them in your hip pocket, because you need to be good to them guys. You know, pay them what they ask for, because they're not out to rob you anyway, because they have a lost art in their own selves, because they know how to work on this stuff. Just like Keith that aligns these old cars for me. That's what he specializes in, is these older cars. I mean, he can do all of them, but his specialty is the old cars and trucks and stuff like that. Found him by accident by another car guy. You know, that's where you start hunting for mechanics in these old cars, is go to your local car show and start asking some of those older guys around, who do I get to work on my stuff?
And honestly, they'll probably get a kick out of you asking them too, just because you're willing to talk to them. Because younger generation these days have a problem talking to the older generation.
Yeah, I guess because they're scared of them, I guess. And you know, I've learned more in my life talking to an old man than I've ever learned talking to somebody my own age.
You will definitely be surprised about what these fellas know, especially about outdated tech, which all these cars is outdated tech.
Oh,
and
yeah.
There's no real getting around that. Like, people will call me crazy for it. A lot of it is still used, but the way it's used in modern tech is totally different, because a lot of things are electronic, where a lot of things in this car are all mechanical.
Yes.
So, which is awesome.
Well,
it's cooler in my opinion.
Oh yeah. Maybe the next time we get to do this, we can have a police chase or something and chase the General Lee on a back road somewhere.
We will set that that scene up. But for now, how about we just ride to this guy's house and let's just do some B-roll footage.
Oh
here,
yeah.
Right? That way everybody can kind of see and get some of it in there. So.
Yeah.